Welcome back to Classic Nostalgia Shows, everyone. Tonight, we're heading back to a world of old jalopies, giant mansions, fish-out-of-water comedy, and honestly, one of the most unexpected hit television shows in American history. Annie, this one's a classic.
Oh, John, I am so excited for this. We're talking about the Beverly Hillbillies. I mean, who doesn't remember that theme song? A show about a poor mountain family who suddenly struck oil and moved to Beverly Hills, and somehow it became one of the biggest television sensations of all time. It's wild to think about.
It really is. How did that happen? Why did millions of Americans fall so completely in love with the Clampetts? And why does the Beverly Hillbillies still remain one of the most recognizable sitcoms ever made, even today? Tonight, we're really diving deep into the story behind the Beverly Hillbillies and why this seemingly unusual comedy became such a lasting piece of American television history.
So, load up the truck, everyone, and move to Beverly Hills, that is. Swimming pools, movie stars, it just takes you right back, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And you know, Annie, when the Beverly Hillbillies first premiered in 1962, it was largely dismissed by television critics. I mean, they just didn't get it.
They really didn't. The premise itself, when you just hear it, sounds a bit outlandish, right? A backwoods mountain family discovers oil on their land, becomes instantly rich, and then they just pack up and move to wealthy Beverly Hills. On paper, it sounds almost too simple.
Exactly. Critics thought it was too silly, too broad, too unrealistic. They just didn't see the appeal, and I think they underestimated the American public. What they didn't understand was that ordinary viewers absolutely loved it. Almost immediately, audiences connected with the Clampett family in a way the critics couldn't predict.
And within a really short time, the show just exploded. It became one of the highest-rated programs on television. I've read that some episodes drew just enormous audiences, numbers that would be almost impossible to imagine today with all the fragmented media we have. It truly became a cultural phenomenon practically overnight.
It's incredible to think about. I mean, we're talking about a show that, at its peak, was watched by a third of all American households with televisions. That's monumental. But why, Annie? What was it about this show that connected so deeply with America?
Well, I think part of the show's success definitely came down to timing. America in the early 1960s was changing so rapidly, wasn't it? Cities were growing, suburbs were expanding like crazy, and these modern lifestyles were really starting to replace older rural traditions. People were feeling this shift.
Right, so you have this backdrop of rapid modernization, and suddenly, here came the Clampetts. They were honest, simple, hardworking, and completely, hilariously out of place in wealthy California society. That contrast, I think, was just gold for audiences.
Absolutely. Audiences found that clash hilarious. But you're right, underneath all the slapstick comedy, the show really tapped into something deeper. I mean, a huge portion of Americans either came from rural backgrounds or had parents and grandparents who did. The Clampetts, in a way, reminded viewers of an older America that was slowly but surely disappearing. That gave the comedy this really emotional warmth, you know?
That's a fantastic point. It wasn't just poking fun, it was also a nod to a simpler past that many people felt a connection to. And at the center of all this, of course, was Jed Clampett, played by the amazing Buddy Ebsen. He became one of television's great father figures, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Jed was just so kind, so calm, so inherently honest and wise in his own quiet way. Even surrounded by all that wealth and luxury in Beverly Hills, Jed remained incredibly grounded. That was so important to the show's message, too.
Yeah, the joke was never really that the Clampetts were foolish. In fact, in many cases, the wealthy, sophisticated people around them often seemed far more ridiculous in their obsessions and pretensions. It was a clever inversion of expectations.
Exactly. And the rest of the family became equally iconic. Granny, Ellie Mae, Jethro, each character brought their own unique style of comedy to the show. Granny, played by Irene Ryan, was especially unforgettable. Her fiery personality, her old-fashioned mountain remedies often involving strange concoctions, and her constant feuds with, well, pretty much everyone became some of the funniest moments in the series.
Granny was a force of nature. You couldn't help but laugh at her determination, even when she was threatening someone with her shotgun. And then, of course, there was Ellie Mae Clampett, played by Donna Douglas. Ellie Mae quickly became one of television's most beloved characters.
Oh, Ellie Mae. She was just so sweet, so innocent, so animal-loving, and completely unaffected by all the glitz and glamour of Beverly Hills culture. She really represented kindness and purity in a world that was so obsessed with appearances. Audiences just adored her, and Donna Douglas became one of the most recognizable television stars of the 1960s because of that role.
She truly did. Even today, I think many people still remember Ellie Mae's critters, as she called them, her lovely southern charm, and those innocent misunderstandings of city life. The character just etched herself into television history.
She absolutely did. I think it all comes back to the core humor of the show, which was entirely dependent on that culture clash, right? The Clampetts entered a world they just didn't understand. Giant mansions, fancy etiquette, high society, banking, luxury lifestyles. Everything was foreign to them.
And the irony, of course, was that Beverly Hills didn't understand them either. That mutual misunderstanding created endless opportunities for comedy. But what really made the show work, in my opinion, was that the Clampetts rarely, if ever, lost their dignity. They always stayed true to themselves.
Yes, the series subtly but consistently suggested that honesty mattered more than sophistication, kindness mattered more than wealth, and common sense mattered more than status. That message, I think, resonated incredibly strongly with viewers, especially working-class audiences who perhaps felt a similar disconnect in their own lives.
It was a powerful, relatable message disguised in slapstick. And speaking of things that resonated, we absolutely have to talk about the theme song. Like many classic sitcoms, the Beverly Hillbillies had an unforgettable opening theme, the Ballad of Jed Clampett.
Oh my gosh, yes. It became one of television's most famous songs. Even people who never regularly watched the show often know the lyrics. Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed. It just sticks with you, doesn't it?
It's an earworm, in the best possible way. The opening sequence immediately told audiences everything they needed to know about the show. It was funny, it was memorable, it was simple. Classic television really understood how important recognizable intros could be, and the Beverly Hillbillies may have had one of the greatest sitcom openings ever made.
It perfectly set the tone and told the whole story in just a minute. It was brilliant. Now, John, one of the most fascinating parts of the show's history, as you mentioned earlier, is how divided critics and audiences were. It's almost legendary how much critics disliked it.
Absolutely. Many television critics at the time considered the humor too broad, unsophisticated, even lowbrow. They really looked down on it. But viewers clearly disagreed completely. And honestly, I think that disconnect says something really important about entertainment in general.
It really does. Audiences don't always want complicated, nuanced storytelling. Sometimes they simply want comfort, laughter, lovable characters, and familiarity. And the Beverly Hillbillies delivered all of that perfectly, week after week.
Despite all the critical complaints, the ratings remained enormous for years because the show understood its audience. It really did. And thinking about it in a broader context, the Beverly Hillbillies represents part of what I call a lost television era today.
Oh, you mean the rural sitcom era. I know exactly what you're talking about. In the 1960s, rural-themed television became hugely popular, didn't it? Shows like Green Acres, Petticoat Junction, The Andy Griffith Show, they all captured these idealized versions of small-town or country life.
Exactly. Audiences found those worlds incredibly comforting, especially during periods of rapid social change, when things in the real world felt a bit chaotic. They offered an escape to something simpler, more wholesome.
And then, eventually, television executives shifted gears in the 1970s, moving towards younger, more urban audiences, and many rural-themed programs just disappeared. It was a conscious decision to de-ruralize TV, if you will.
Yeah, they called it the rural purge. But even though those shows went off the air, the nostalgia for them never fully vanished, because they represented warmth and familiarity, a sense of home for so many people.
Which brings us to today. So why do you think the Beverly Hillbillies still attracts viewers decades later, John, beyond just the nostalgia factor?
Well, partly because it's genuinely still funny. The humor holds up in many ways. But also because it feels safe, comforting, and optimistic. The Clampetts were never cruel people. The humor rarely felt mean-spirited, which I think is a big draw for modern audiences who sometimes miss that gentler style of comedy.
I agree. It's a comedy you can watch with anyone, any age, and just feel good. The show also preserves so much of 1960s culture, classic television pacing, old Hollywood production styles, and even vanished American attitudes and traditions. Watching it today really does feel almost like opening a time capsule.
It truly does. And when you look at its lasting legacy, the Beverly Hillbillies became far more than just a sitcom. It became a bona fide part of American culture. The characters, the truck, the mansion, that theme song, all instantly recognizable even decades later.
And perhaps the biggest reason the series endured is because beneath all the jokes, the show carried a surprisingly simple yet profound message. Money doesn't change who you are. The Clampetts became rich, fabulously rich, but they never stopped being themselves. They never lost their core values.
And audiences, I think, deeply respected that. Especially in a world that was increasingly focused on status and appearances, the Clampetts were a refreshing reminder that authenticity still mattered. That's a timeless message.
Absolutely. The Beverly Hillbillies may have started as a simple comedy about a mountain family moving to California, but it became one of the defining sitcoms of television's golden age, a show filled with laughter, nostalgia, and reminders of a very different America.
And even today, when audiences hear that famous banjo music begin to play, they still smile. It's just ingrained in us.
They really do. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on Classic Nostalgia Shows. It's been a blast revisiting the Clampetts.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment sharing your favorite Beverly Hillbillies memory or character, and let us know which classic television series or movie legend we should explore next. Until next time, everyone.
Keep the classics alive.